Welcome to Issaquah Christian Church.
Some days on the calendar are hit different. How many of you have noticed that? You get to a season a year or a calendar time and you're like, why does my body just what am I remembering? What is this? And grief often does that. How many of you watched that where it's like, wow, that holiday is different now. That birthday, that oh we what does going to the beach feel bad? Oh, that's right, because my dad used to take us to the beach. You know, those kind of things where like there's a scene, there's a scenario, something's deep and it's missing. For us, February 22, go figure, us today marks kind of the last week that I had with my daughter 3 years ago. And I was texting Izzy the other day about this sermon, and I was thinking about Ella, my daughter, and so I started to text Ella my sermon notes, and I was like, "Oh, not her." And so then I read up like the text from this last week, 3 years ago, and you're just like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is heavy. This is deep. This is difficult." We all know in theory. I hope we all know in theory that we're gonna die. I mean, that's. I don't think that's a spoiler alert, is it? You've seen enough, you know, that's the way it is, but most of us spend a lot of time pretending like that's not ever gonna happen, right? Don't we do that? Or you're just like, "No, I mean, not me." I mean, I'm not just talking about 18, 20, 25-year-olds. I'm talking about, like, 40, the forever 21 crowd who's 52, and you're like, "Well, wait, it's actually going the other direction." And, you're further away from 21 now than you ever were as a child. Like, it's not that's not the way this goes. That's not the way it goes. We keep life loud or busy or fun because facing, limits, finite uh, timelines just bothers us because, I mean, if anything, I am limitless. If anything, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I can ride a scooter, whatever. We were talking about that in prayer requests. You can't always do that, right? Um, so my 18-year-old Ella, she died suddenly, in my arms. Our family walked straight into what Ecclesiastes would call the house of mourning. Like, really, like, not haunted hallways, but, like, memory hallways, like, where I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that place," and it took me a minute to even walk down some of those same hallways, like, my sister-in-law, God bless her, she's like, "So that was the spot right there?" And then prays for that spot on the floor, I'm like, "Oh, thank you, yeah, yeah, because there's some haunting, right?" So, the days that followed just kind of, well, not kind of, did rearrange everything that matters. You're thinking about what actually matters, and it's like, well, I got all shifted, all rearranged, and it happens to you guys too. Um, what matters, what doesn't matter, and then what it means to trust Jesus in the storm. Like, what does that even look like? Quite the test, right? So Kohelet, our main voice in Ecclesiastes, that's his name. It's Hebrew, Kohelet. It means the guy who convenes and draws the crew together and says, "I got something to tell you about what I've learned." He has the audacity to say that the house of mourning is somehow better for us than the house of feasting. And how many of you like that idea? I mean, some of you are awkward partiers. I look at you and I can tell. You're pretty awkward at parties. I can, but others of you are like, no, I'm a lot more awkward at a funeral. A lot more awkward at a funeral. Um, he says, "For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart." Just think about that. Think about the finiteness and how upside down that is. Surely life is the best when your team wins the Super Bowl at the 49ers stadium. I mean, come on, that was been nice to be like, to kinda see red, or see blue and green in the midst of the red of Levi Stadium. I think they're just gonna burn it down after this because it's just not right. It's just not right for them. So that's good. We ruined it for them. But surely that's the time to be really excited about life because your team wins. That's when I'm gonna learn the most, right? But if we ignore the reality of death, and some of you are tooth and nail, "I will not, this will not happen," we actually drift into trivial living. It really just becomes just trinkets and baubles and ornaments on something that is decaying. So, like, what is this like? So if we face it though, grief And the processes that happen in our bodies when we are grieving can become a strange, if scary, schoolhouse. Because it's teaching you something about like what's real. And if anything, today can be a reality check, not just in the dark stuff, but also in how Jesus wants to walk through us in these things of this schoolhouse. Don't hear me saying that what you learn in there will make all the bad stuff worth it. That's not the point. Hear me say that. Maybe I don't know if you could repeat that with me, but what we learn in that schoolhouse doesn't make it all worth it, right? That's not what I'm saying. Like I was talking to Jamie the other day, and we were talking about the calculus that sometimes we make. Well, if this happened, if 5 people came to know Jesus because of Ella, I would gladly give her life again. Like, no, 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 no. There's no calculus that makes any sense. I just get my daughter. That's all. That's the only thing. We don't negotiate with terrorists. I'm just gonna get my daughter. That's the only thing, right? So don't hear me say what I'm not saying. But when we allow that grief to just, oh, let's apparently there's something I got to process right now. When you let that happen, it actually can teach us about the way to live in the middle of this whole thing. So if you can relate to that ache at any level, then you can relate to the people that Kohelet is speaking to. And so let's just listen to what he says about death, about mourning, and the God who meets us right there. Can you do that with me? We just do it for me. Yeah, just do it for me. So uh, I'm going to read actually verses 1 through 4, but he starts talking about the contrast between wisdom and folly. He says, a good name is better than precious ointment. Okay. And the day of death than the day of birth. Whoa. No. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, meaning that's where it all ends up. That's the purpose. That's where it all goes. And the living will lay it to heart. Okay, living, here we are, lay it to heart. That's our job today. Sorrow is better than laughter, he goes on, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. Huh. The heart of the wise is in the house of of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. Okay, sorrow is better than laughter. Now, not all sorrow all the time, but if you're just stacking it up, what's better? I think to sit in the pain, and we know this when we rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn, we live in this tension where the dark times are made super dark, but then the bright times are on that backdrop. And so there's something about the range of life that we're not avoiding anymore, right? We stop avoiding it. He goes on a few verses later to say, consider the work of God, who can make straight, the question is, what he has made crooked. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. And in the day of adversity, consider. God has made those days the same, the one as well as the other. Um, and so we're living in a mystery. Man may not find out anything that will be after him. You're not insured to know what's beyond the grave, especially from Kohelet's perspective. For him, the grave is just it. That's just where it all ends. Now, we would understand that he believes in a God who never ends, and in the Old Testament we have the idea that we will be in his care. But when we think about the bleakness of the grave and we look beyond it, it's very mysterious. Will anybody remember me when I'm gone? Seems to be a question that a lot of us wonder. Will anybody remember me? Maybe like how many of you can remember your great grandma's name? Great grandma? Okay, great great grandma. Anybody? What's her middle name? Where did she grow up? Oh, I remember her friends when she was growing up, right? No, it starts to stretch, and then pretty soon, okay, that was my life, and that was the time I had, and it sobers you up a little bit. Sobers you up. That's okay. We're not all happy clappy Christians in the room. We can actually deal with some of this and be like, yeah, that's tough. That's really stinks. The things that some of you experienced this last week, I was there for some of them. That really stinks. I mean, it's very, very difficult. Prosperity and adversity land on our doorstep from a God that we can't control. We just don't. We don't control it. If you're trying to game the system and try to move the variable of God out of your life, realize he's the constant. I mean, just you're not gonna do anything that says, okay, well, okay, with God not paying attention and with God, God aside, here's what I'm gonna do with my life. That just doesn't work. We need to factor it all in, and he is the constant. Okay? In chapter 9, he goes on, and this will be a bit longer, but I think you'll hear it. This is really good. You can meet God in both kinds of days, in prosperity and in adversity. But but he who's joined with all the living has hope. I mean, think about it. A living dog is better than a dead lion. We're all happy about that. For the living know that they will die, but the dead, not so much. And they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate and their envy have already perished. And forever they have no more share in all that's done under the sun. So that's there's almost a grace in a lifetime, a grace in that time between the birth date and the death date and the dash, and that there is there's an end to it. Some people have seen in the Garden of Eden the the when God gave them skins of gave them garments of skin to wear. It was actually a transition to, now you are not just um, conditionally immortal, you are now mortal. You are now you're going to die, and that was a grace that we're not going to have them sin and be as evil and have all their maliciousness, all that forever and ever and ever and ever. There's going to be a clock. The clock is ticking, and that's actually a mercy for those that have to live with those people, and anyway, and for those of us that their love and their hate and their envy have already perished, and forever they have no more share in all that's done under the sun. I don't receive death as a mercy right now, personally, but there's something built in. Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. He's given you a life. He wants you to live it. Go do it. I'm living like a dog. Well, better than a dead lion. Go eat up and enjoy what you've got. Let your garments be always white, meaning you're ready to party. You're ready to show up. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife with whom you love all the days of your vain vaporous life that he has given you under the sun, because that's your portion in life and in your toil and in which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for there's no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom on the other side, in Sheol, in the grave, to which you are going. Well, thanks for the pep talk. Thanks for the pep talk. But if you're still breathing, right, there's hope. The author of Hebrews would say, hey, as long as it's still called today, encourage one another. Go after it. You're alive. This is good. You don't have to give up right now. But we do need to think of the numbering of our days, and think about what does it look like to live fully and wisely right now. And this isn't an excuse to give up. No excuses to give up. It's hard, right? And so Jesus is with you. Well, who could teach us the words of God and the way of God, and who could teach us how to walk with God? Who could teach us to be faithful to God? Well, Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faithfulness, of our allegiance, and so we pursue Him. Right. So this is not just sad, 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 but this is my premise, and you can raise your hand and shout back if you're not ready to hear it. But I think that death has something to teach us. And I think grief can become a school of wisdom. Not that, oh, what I learned in the school makes it all worth it. Not saying that, but grief does tend to just show up, bodily grief. How many of you have ever just had that wave of grief just sweep over you and you're like, I don't think I'm doing anything for the next 12 years. And it's like, I think that's it. But grief is like, it's like this. It's your bumper check. You just hit something really hard. Grief is like a school where we learn about life, but then Jesus can be and shows up as the anchor in the storm. And so we're just going to waft through that. And if you'll seriously raise your hand, though, if you're like, yeah, but I also thought, that's fine. I don't mind. But this idea that death is a teacher, as we kind of move through the ground floor to the second floor, life is a gift, to the third floor, life is accountable. This is where I want to take us through, just to think through this idea. So that idea that it's better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. For the end, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. So we just got to lay it to heart. Kohelet is not anti-party. You heard him say it. He's like, "No, eat, drink, be merry. This is great. You got time? Go for it. This is wonderful. Just remember that it's limited." And those are the biggest limits I can imagine, is the fact that I just will not persist. That's it for my life. That it's only going this far and no further. Uh, In the house of mourning, you don't get to dodge the truth that this is where my story is headed and where your story is headed. um, I will be glad to host your funeral. I'll be glad to preach the gospel at your funeral. Like Steve said the other day, that's at least one thing you could do in your life, is like have the gospel preached at your funeral. Happy to do it for me, but some of you are going to need to do it for me. That's all I'm going to say, right? I mean, we're going to go through these times, where this is the story. This is where it's going. The same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil. These are our limits. Death isn't like, "Oh, let me see. Oh, you have a nice resume. Well, let's just," no, it's just still like, it's still there. It just goes on the obituary page, and that's where it all goes. So pretending it's not coming is actually dangerous to your soul. Let the living lay it to heart. Pretending like I'm going to look like I'm 22 for the rest of my life, I mean all the way till death, I'm going to look. No, I mean, just there's just some processes taking place here. Um, Death is a terrible enemy, but also an honest teacher if we would let it listen to us. And so that's where masks comes off, priorities are just really rearranged, and you get to see how fragile you really are. So I don't know if you avoid memorials or you go to as many as you can. Probably somewhere in the middle would be good for you. I don't crash a lot of memorials, but when we host one here and we say it's open to everybody, just come. You don't have to know the people. You don't have to even know. You don't have to know that, but it's just good to just sit with that. I didn't know your son John, never met him, right? But when his granddaughter Allie is weeping over her words, I'm in tears because I'm remembering, right? So it's like I don't know him, but somehow there's a lesson in the midst of it all. When you just say I'm a big softie, and that's fine too, whatever. Um, But for our family, these lessons came compressed into 3 dates, and you don't have to remember this, but it was in the late night of February 28th, so March 1st, that my daughter died, and that was bad enough. And then March 7th was when she was finally declared dead, and then on March 10th was her organ donation, and that was, some of you were there. But she had it was a seizure and a heart attack. Um, she had intended suicide and tried to reverse it, but it was just too late. And that was the thing that just shifted a world. Um, Over the next 7 days, they got a heartbeat and took her away, and her organs recovered. We prayed for that. For some reason, the toxicity had just has was able to um, move out, and but on March 7th, she was declared dead, so there's no sign of brain function, and it was just that was the moment. And that was just a really bad day all around. So, it's not a pity party. I just wanna tell you, because I don't know that I've told everybody these stories, but, um, that same day, our middle daughter, Maria, was driving at night and just took a corner and then just kept the corner and ran into a telephone pole. Took out with her Civic a whole telephone pole, knocked it down, all sorts of craziness. Um So I'm there with my boys trying to keep my sanity, and a firefighter is yelling at my boys to get out of the road. It's not safe. And I'm just like, all right, somebody's gonna die right now. It was just the worst day, and I don't know how I didn't deck him. But Jesus. I've told Jesus to keep me on a tight leash, so maybe that was it. Um, I didn't throw any punches. I just kept those right here. But oh my goodness. them following the paramedics to Overlake and trying to sleep in a chair in the ER, as some of you have done. On the night that I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness, this is not okay. This is awful. And Heather's with Ella, or I guess, yeah, I mean, she's with Ella, but maybe Ella's body, it might say. And Maria walks away with very little damage. And then on March 10, so this is kind of our week, right? It's like, woof, this is our week. March 10th was an organ donation and an honor walk and all these things where some of you came and her body was wheeled down on the cart, to take organ donations. And even then, I mean, mixed into all that muddle, go figure, it's not bad enough. But some people are like, you know, I think Jesus is going to heal her even now. We're like, okay, thank you, that's very nice. Days before that, people were like, I think I've got a prayer I'm supposed to say if we could FaceTime with her in the bed, and then with the intent that this prayer is going to wake her up. And I'm like, okay, all right, here, talk to my girl. I'm just like, thank you. That's very well meaning. That's very wonderful. And then even criticism over, well, is organ donation faithless? Because, I mean, you're saying that she's over and God can't do it. And Heather and I were like, I'm so sorry, but if God can uh, raise her from the dead, I don't think organs are going to be the problem, and so we're just gonna have to go forward, right? So in the muddle of all that was just kind of this mixture of, don't you believe? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I believe he's walking with me. I believe he's going through this with I believe he's mourning me, and that's teaching me, right? That's teaching you. So those houses of mourning and death, I can't speak for anybody else in my family. You could talk to Heather about her experience too, but I was just hanging on to Jesus, hanging on to allegiance to him. Just hanging on to, like, okay, what are you going to do, Jesus, in this moment? Death doesn't get the last word in my family. We're not going to implode over this. We're not going to explode over this. My marriage is not going to go away over this. I'm going to lean into my marriage. I'm going to lean into Jesus. This is going to happen, right? What the enemy means for evil is not going to end up evil. We're going to let God do something in the midst of it. Maybe you've got some ways to make some parallels or overlapping circles with me in that story, but don't let it have the effect that the evil wants it to have. You got to pursue Jesus in these days. Death is telling each of us that we're not in control, our time is limited, and don't waste it. Right. So here's the first move. Let the living understand. What is death trying to teach you that you've been refusing to lay to heart? For me, it's a lot about my own limitations, which I just resist limitations. I mean, yeah, I did go get hamstring repair after 2 years of deciding I don't care about it. That sort of thing. I mean, I'm like, I have no limitations. What are you talking about? I'm finding more and more and more limitations, and so are you, and that's okay. Something about that. So this idea that grief is a wisdom school. It's walking us through that. Consider the work of God, who can make straight what he has made crooked. These are the speed bumps and the slow down lanes that we have to think through. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. In the day of adversity, consider God has made the one as well as the other. And so I don't think Kohelet is trying to say that evil is a good thing. It just happens to be the days that feel bright and the days that feel unbearable are all coming through God's hands somehow. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you deal with the fact that we have a loving God who cares for us and still allows these things to happen. Every one of you, I bet we have 40 different versions on how you make sense of that. Or some of you are still going like, I'm throwing it all out because that doesn't make any sense to me. So I bet you have a way to process that. But it's not that evil is a good thing. It's that there's limitations around our life that teach us about who God is. And grief doesn't feel good. If you've been washed over by a wave of it, it's just like is there a shutdown code that just happened in my body? What, did somebody just click, 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 and reset or shut down or something like that? You know that that's not great, but God can teach us in the midst of that. Teach us what a pace could look like. And I'm speaking for myself. You don't have to run so fast. I know I don't run. I'm not a runner, but like you don't have to go so fast. You don't have to go so speedy. You need to use this speed bump to just slow down, face the stuff that your body's trying to tell you. It's just this reminder, like, oh, here we are. Here we are. And grief is a deep bundle of emotional and bodily responses that all just kind of seem to work against you, but they're not working against you. They're working for you. And I don't like this feeling. Okay, I don't either. But we could try to avoid it somehow, or we can sit with it and let God walk us through these things. I'm no expert on this, but just my personal experience would be that I think grief is just kind of like stuck in you like a sliver. And how many of you know that a sliver will come out even if you don't touch it? But it's gonna have an interesting effect on your arm to create the things to, like, expel this thing, and what else rots in the meantime, right? So it just is what it is. It's just this bottle it's this great I think it's a gracious bodily response for Jesus to brake check you and say, "Like, sit with it for a minute. Sit with the reality of it for a minute. Feel that. Let that happen to you. Go through that experience." Now I'm more prone to try to hack grief, so don't hear me saying I've got all the plans or all the great ways to do it, but I figure I'm gonna at least try working on the sliver and see if there's a way we can I'm gonna deal with the fact that it's in there, and I'm just gonna try to sit with that and figure out what that could look like. Um 'Cause I don't want it to come out in just really terrible behavior. I don't want it to come out in really bad choices. I don't want it to come out in racing to something or breaking up my relationship with my wife or any of these kind of things. I wanna, like, lean in with it. And so there is kind of built into grief this kind of curriculum that says, "Slow down." And you're like, "I have no choice." That's right. You've been slowed down. Now what does it look like to process that with Jesus and walk through it? Uh, So actually see an actual therapist for actual advice. I know that I don't hold the wisdom on this, um, but I know that there are things that we trust in that are always just going to keep giving us slivers too, you know. So go to Jesus, run to Jesus, run to Jesus. No, in the quake of losing Ella, and I mean it felt like an earthquake. Um, I personally discovered the value in all of the little ways that I had been saying yes to Jesus. And there's so many more, and if he could testify or you can show up at the throne judgment and you can see all the ways I didn't say yes to Jesus, but all the little ones that I was like, "Okay, I will say yes to you. I will choose you over this. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna pursue you. I'm gonna do this." Those little yeses, over decades, choosing to trust and to obey and to not and to root myself in the ways of Jesus, um, that actually paid off. I mean, it really did. Trust didn't just magically show up in the emergency room. As you know, just walk into those houses or those things and be like, "Oh, and now because I am under the auspices of this place, I trust Jesus." It actually has to grow with you through these times, um, and the ordinary stuff. That's why we say Jesus said, "If you hear my words and put them into action," it's kind of a bummer. Some of us just like to listen, but like, hear my words and put them into action. It's going to be like a life that's built on a rock that can withstand the storms. So you don't have to do that. You can hear Jesus's words and not put them into action. And when life happens, when the storm comes, the house that's built on the sand will just fall flat. And this is that mindset. So what does it look like today before you go into the house of mourning, or 2 weeks ago before you ended up experiencing what you did yesterday? What does it look like to just start saying yes to Jesus, to let him guide you along the way? That's my personal perspective. At the same time, grief exposed where I'd been leaning on what I do in work and in ministry. I've been leaning on control or busyness instead of leaning on Jesus. So it's not all a great story. There are all sorts of things that got exposed at this little creepy school that was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know who I am unless I'm doing those things. And I can't do those right now. And so this is really teaching me something, you know? Ask someone in the room that has gray or even white hair, and they will say, "Oh, I've experienced a few limitations too." And then you ask them, "Okay, how are you dealing with those limits? How are you staying faithful to Jesus when you can't do all the things that you used to do?" And they'll either tell you that came to a sudden halt on the one day of my diagnosis or whatever, or it's been a long process of just having to say, "I guess I'm not doing that anymore. I'm gonna have to figure out new ways to follow Jesus." So I adjure you don't take adjuration, I bet. I commend to you the white hairs in this room to ask them questions. What does it look like? Because I'm facing it down. And not like, oh, it's I'd never, I'm gonna be as old as you someday. Oh my goodness, not that, but just when we think of limitations, like how are you processing them? Because it's something we just don't like to talk about until it's a little bit too late, and then we talk about it at a memorial, right? So just start that process. We have a lunch every month where you can just say, "You know who I'm gonna sit next to this next month? Hey, can we get a date at the table next month? Hey, I'd like to sit with you. Or next week, I have some questions." Uh, and and as someone had said, that some other pastor said, he said, "Don't age out, sage out." Be the sages in the room, and you young whippersnappers, go talk to some of the people who have a few miles under their on their car, a few years under their belt, and see what God can do. I would just encourage you to that because that understanding of limitations strips away the illusions of control, but opens a new dependence on God that really does teach us something. Instead of just saying, "I can't handle this," which that's real. You can say, "Jesus," and this is what I started saying, "Jesus, what are you trying to teach me right now? What are you trying to do right now? What is going on? I have no idea. Why this now? Doesn't make any sense. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Where are you in this moment?" And so my second move here for you from that second floor, hey, life is a gift. So where in your own grief, recent or buried, um, maybe it's something you've experienced or you said, "I will never experience that again. So I got to figure out what I can do to never experience that again." Not wise, but what might God be inviting you to step into in this wisdom school instead of just shutting the door? Is there something here for me? What do you want to teach me? And then the last bit, we understand that Jesus is the anchor, but what does that look like to make that happen? Um, if you're still alive, there's still hope, and that's it's a bit sobering, right? The living know they're going to die, and so this is the thing. What am I going to do in the midst of it? And so don't be paralyzed. Don't be punished by this. Just be pushed to action. Okay. All right. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. We read that. There's no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in shield to where you're going. So this is your time. So do it. Go for it. By the end of the book, the message is crystal clear. This gift of God, it says, "Fear God, keep his commandments, for God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil." So if you took death and then you add judgment to it, that sounds like a crushing blow. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because the judge who was wisdom, who by the world, by the wisdom of the word, all things were created. Jesus, the just, comes and dies with us and dies for us. And so he is the judge who's already walked all the way through that. And he knows the way to walk through these moments as well. In Christ, in Jesus, the God who numbers our days also anchors our souls. It says, I know death happens. I know limitations happen. They did this to me too. God didn't just say, there's got to be a good one around here. We'll just sacrifice. We'll just give up their life. He actually came and took on flesh so that he could die in our place, and to show and to show us that this is the course. And if we trust in him, he'll take us through death to the other side, where there is light, and there is light. No. Some of you know I've written a few books, and then in one book called Rough Waters, which is that trying to find stability and somehow security in the midst of just all the stuff that goes on. I talk about Jesus as a refuge and a strong tower. Okay, so he is my security. Um, and and in the months after Ella's death, my attachment to Jesus, my desire to run to him, just got stronger and stronger, to where else would you go? His disciples said that, but where else would you go? You alone have the words of life. We're only running to you. And I just commend Jesus to you. I don't know where you're at with him, but he is magnetically attracted to the brokenhearted. It's the ones who say, "No, I'm fine. Leave me alone. Leave me alone." That he's like, "Oh, are you saying you want the creator of the universe to leave you alone?" Let's not say that out loud and mean it. So if your magnet is flipped and you're repelling Jesus, you might consider, actually, I have some brokenness. I have some hurt. I have some grief. I wonder if I could come close to you, Jesus. Would you come close to me? It's always that invitation, as long as it's still called today. Don't flip the magnet. Because people get through all sorts of things all their lives and all of human history. And so I can't say they didn't do this or I know something better. I don't know that. But it was like that anchor below the surface that's holding me steady. I wrote about this too, but it's like a boat in the storm that's just going crazy. Well, Jesus did that, asleep in the boat too, right? The storm's going crazy, and all the kids are looking to the mom or the dad who's the pilot of this boat, and they're watching their face, like, "Are we okay? Are we okay or not?" And the mom or dad, the parent can say, "No, we're anchored deep. The waves are going to do this, but we're anchored deep." But they're watching the face of that mom going like, "Is she freaked out? Am I supposed to be freaked out?" Jesus is asleep on the boat, and they're like, "Now that freaks us out. How can he be okay? How can this be okay?" And he's saying, "Watch me as I go through the storm with you." And then this is what it could look like to be an anchor for your soul, firm and secure, because Jesus has gone to the inner courts of heaven to represent us. Here's the move. We're about done. If you know your days are numbered and Jesus is your anchor, what needs to change about how you're living now? The things that you're chasing, the words that you say, and things that you might just need to leave unsaid too. I'd encourage you to just say, that's shocking. And I know that most of you didn't come here to hear Kohelet talk about death and grief and mourning, but um, but not every Sunday morning service isn't everything awesome, and because that's certainly not the Christian life. We've encouraged you over and over and over. Just bring it in, whatever it is. Just bring it in. It's okay. It hurts. I get it. Bring it in. That's all right. Jesus knows about this too. And so this is one of those moments you're probably not going to like. Hey, friends, you should come to Issaquah Christian Church. They are such a downer, right? Um, but we don't really care about that. I think this is the truth, and I hope you've heard the truth. I hope you're going to live in the truth of just limitations are okay. They actually help us define what God is asking of us. You ever had that moment where you're like, apparently, Jesus is not asking me to go there and do this and do that because I am bedridden, you know, or a straitjacket, whatever. Okay, apparently I am not supposed to do this, and this. Like if I could speak to Dexter, I don't know if you get to watch these things, but like, you obviously have some limitations, buddy. So God's not asking you to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. He's asking you to do this. right? I mean, limitations just are terrible, but now, okay, so maybe Jesus knows what I'm doing in this moment with him. And my desire to be, I wish I was over there and over there and over there and over there and over there. Turns out I can't do all of that. And so those limitations can be a blessing to just teach us, oh, so that's what he requires of me, just to be faithful in this moment, not the things I can imagine, but just this moment. And we can do that. Yeah, church, can you do that? You can lean into Jesus in the moment that you're in. It's hard to do it 2 days from now. Strength for today, right? Hope for tomorrow, but he's going to give you the strength to say yes to him and be faithful to him just in this day. And we live way too much with regrets of the past and too much future tripping over the anxieties of what's going to come, but he's just saying no, but you're here and it's today, so trust me. And I think we can do that. I think we can. So here's some ways to just try to take it from the abstract and Aaron's sad story or whatever, and just start to think, okay, what's one loss that I carry? And we've all experienced it. Maybe not the full depth, but we've all experienced losses, relationships, dreams, betrayals, all the things, and name it before God and just say, okay, I'm going to sit in that house for a minute. Would you teach me? Some of you have had deep betrayals in your life, and you still think about it a lot. And Jesus is aware of that too. So one of the processes I've done with Jesus is just say, okay, Jesus, where do you want to start? Who's on the top of the list that you want to start with? And just sit with, that was really hard. That was really hard. And so that I could get to bless and do not curse. And I could get to pray for and not wish harm on. And Jesus, where do you want to start? Where do you want to start? Let me just say that was a loss that hurt. And many of us don't know how to do that. Some of you probably really struggle with saying that was really hard. I don't like that happened. And I'm upset, God. Like, why would you let that happen? Some of you don't want to do that. And I would encourage you, no, it's okay. There's there's faithless complaining, which is like, I don't know what's wrong with this world. I can't believe it. And I'm talking to all you. And like, oh, who's actually in charge? Well, him, but I don't want to talk to him. That's faithless complaining. A faithful lament says, God, you're the sovereign of the universe. I know you can do things. I know you can turn the hearts of kings like a water course. I know you can do all these things. How long is this all just going to keep going on? Like, what are you doing in heaven that could help us here on earth? Like, what? That's faithful. And some of you are like, no, I'm only supposed to stay positive with Jesus. Well, that means you're faking it with him. Don't fake it with him. You can fake it with me. I don't care. But like, and I see through it anyway. But I mean, you can fake it here. But don't pretend you don't have issues with it. I was talking to some people right after my friend Dex got taken into custody, and I was like, "Hey, just remember one thing. Just tell him about it. Tell him about it. Tell him about it. Tell him more. Okay, tell him more things about that. That's hard. That's difficult. That's really I don't like it. And so talk to him about that. Don't say, "Oh, he'll do nothing about it. I'll just go complain to you." Like, well, no, don't do that. Invite God into that grief. Just say, "Okay, ooh, what's going on in this storm? What do you want to? How do you want to teach me in the midst of it?" Again, it's not a calculus. Oh, I learned a great lesson, so I'm so happy I had the grief. We're not saying that. Nobody's saying that. But there are moments where he can lead us and do that. And then just take one step to anchor yourself in Jesus. Just okay. Every time I hear that, I'm going to go to this psalm. And every time I experience that, I'm going to turn on this song. Every time I do this, I'm going to call this friend. I'm going to take one step to just walk with Jesus in the midst of it. Maybe you just need to say, I'm going to leave my phone at home. Even though you don't get your steps don't count if you leave your phone at home. Did you know that? That's such a shame. But this is one, Jesus is counting your steps. You just go on a walk with Jesus, no phone, whatever, and you just say, I got a problem. Like this is just too much. And then let him work with you on those things. Um, Ask a trusted friend just to step into it with you as well. So I just encourage you to take some steps. Don't just sit there and be befuddled by the grief that just overwhelms you. Don't sit there and just complain to other people. Talk to him about it and say, all right, let's walk through this. You be my anchor in the storm. So um I'm just trying to think, why does this matter for you? Why does this matter for us? I think if you just say not along with Ecclesiastes and say, yeah, life is short, I get it. Um, that's one thing, but it's another thing to say, I'm going to let the death that I experience in other people's lives and death, um, and the grief that I experience over all these different kinds of losses, I'm going to let it change how I live and who I cling to. Then you've actually learned something from today or from those lessons, those grieving moments. If you ignore death, you'll waste your life on what doesn't last. So if you're just like, oh, no, it'll never happen to me, then you're not even living in reality. If you ignore grief or you refuse it, like it's not allowed here, I'm going to just press on and I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. You'll miss some of the deepest stuff, the wisdom that God wants to teach you. Seems better to sit with that, slow it down, let it be the speed bump that you needed anyway. I mean, if you let death and grief teach you, let it become a wisdom school, then Jesus can actually say, okay, since we're dealing in reality, let me walk with you through this. But it's the valley of the shadow of death. Yes. So let me walk with you so that you fear no evil. But if we live in fantasy land, then Jesus doesn't fit into fantasy land. He's the word, he's truth. And so he is the faithful one and knows what it's like to only do and say what the Father has told him and shown him, and so he's the one that we walk with through all this stuff. Let me pray for you, and then we'll take communion as we close. Father God, I speak on behalf of all of those who resist limitations in any way, and we don't like them, and we don't want them, and yet in some way there's a strange gift there for us. And so give us wisdom to cling to you and say yes to you in the moment that we have this February 22 of 2026 approaching noon. We just offer ourselves to you and say, you take my life. I don't really know what to do with it. It hurts too much any. And so we just offer ourselves to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.